But you know what? I was playing golf with a friend of mine, and we were talking about, and I guess this is an interesting subject to kick us off here, how external Jason Day can get with his chipping. So if you look at the best in the world, they're able to get rid of the technique as to how you do these tasks. And I think with YouTube, with shows like this, with obviously what Bubsy does and what I do, there is so much information coming around now with golf, and it makes you wonder if has that given a lot of us paralysis by analysis, to be honest with you. Because, you know, when we were 14, you and I hung out a lot, early 20s, late teens, were we ever talking technique when it came to hitting chip shots, golf shots? Golf shots maybe, but chip shots certainly not. And I think that with chipping in particular, the expectation is you're going to chip it close every time. And I think with the long game, you can accept what mediocre is. And the truth is, quite often we hit mediocre golf shots. And I think you can accept it in the long game, but in the short game, it's extremely hard to do. And I think that comes into sort of light when you look at the stats and you look at how PGA Tour players do and strokes gained for them and the distances they are versus what we are. And you realize, like, it's very easy to accept mediocre in the long game, but in the short game, I think it's hard. Then that forces you to search on the internet, and then it sends you down a rabbit hole of thumbs down, steep, shallow, rotate. I mean, really, what happened to just chunking this thing on the green and being good with it? Because you can do that, certainly in the mud.
Yeah, in the mud, you can definitely do that. Obviously, I grew up in Kikuyu grass in South Africa, and the ball just sits high. So you felt like every shot was almost like a bunker shot all the time. So, yeah, it's quite different when you play on different grasses for sure. But it is interesting because you're right. When you get into the game and you start getting pretty decent at golf, you very rarely think about technique or short game. I mean, you get the fundamentals, but once you go past those fundamentals, you just basically vary that and go off piste and figure out a way to get better. But I think the point that I've taken from that a little bit is, and you see this more when it's live, but when you see the good players, you know, the professional golfers on the PGA Tour, European Tour, wherever they might play, they don't always hit it as close as you imagine that they hit it. I mean, it's close. They're hitting skilled shots. But to them, you know, if they chip it and it gets to, say, 4 feet, maybe 5 feet, that's a good shot. They're obviously happy with that to a level because they're so good at holding out thereafter as well. Whereas I think for us, or certainly for me as an amateur and seeing other amateurs, like we almost get a little bit pissed off if it's not within 4 feet.
Definitely.
And that's not really a fair outcome based on the volume that we play and practice. But to tour players, 4 feet is kind of like a maximum acceptable level, depending on the distance and the challenge of the shot.
Definitely. And I think the thing is, get on this, right? You hit a tee shot downhill. Like I've been thinking this for a long time. A downhill tee shot is significantly easier than an uphill tee shot. A downhill iron shot is significantly easier. Close to the green, chip shot is easier than a further away. And a downhill chip, generally onto a green that's below you, is a bit easier than a chip that is uphill. So all the technique and the will in the world, I get it. It's got to be at a certain point. But when you've been playing golf for 25 years and your technique generally is there, I think if the missed strike comes, it's because you weren't external. I'm a big believer in that. And I think that why I know, again, from tracking data a lot, you make more for the right-hander. It's usually right to lefters than you do left to righters. And the moment you get external, you make more, which is why I think we change putters so much as golfers. You see it on the tour. Credit to McIlroy. I know we're going to get to him. Credit to Fitzpatrick. Big week this week for both those players. Fitzpatrick's just changed the putter. Doesn't change. The other thing that came to light to me yesterday for sure, I played golf with a different manufacturer's wedge to what I usually use. I used a Vokey, and I haven't used a Vokey in... I've hit like a handful of chip shots over the last 5 years with a Vokey, and I don't use competitors' clubs very much, to be honest, which might be, it's probably a gap. I probably should do more, but, you know, obviously being such a TaylorMade guy for so long, it's clubs I've used for so long. You realize in areas, let's keep it on wedges because this is short game we're covering. TaylorMade's wedges have come on a long way. And B, you realize I was using that K grind. I don't think I think wedges are a bit like golf shafts. I think you can have a standard bounce and a low bounce, and you could be done. But that K grind obviously is a wide sole, and I was fine with it everywhere until I got in the bunkers, and then I was like, "Oh, this is different." You know what I mean? Significantly different. And I think it shows you when you fit wedges and you work with wedges, you've got to try all the different shots and know where the individual plays. But you have to have a basic technique to get the most out of the bounce. So I think if you're going to, or the leading edge, or the trail edge. So if you're going to fit these things, you got to have time. You got to have different grasses, to your point, different bunkers, different shots. And then you got to get into a different understanding of each shot. And you've somehow got to make the individual doing the fitting, receiving the fitting, get external to hit the shots and understand, like, yeah, controlling low point is essential for good chipping. But as we'll hear today, I haven't heard this interview, but the method that the guy that's getting interviewed by Chris is quite different to some of the stuff that you would see in America, which is interesting. And I think you can master a method that is flawed and still become unbelievably good at it. And then years later, when technology moves on, people realize that flawed technique maybe wasn't as flawed as what people assumed.